If you're going to truly make the leap from lawyer to business mogul, you've got to understand the math of the money. And today we're breaking down that math with a special guest. All right, friend, welcome back to the Lawyer Millionaire Podcast. I'm your host, Darren Wurz, and I'm very excited today to welcome to the show my special guest, Ryan Kimler. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Darren. I'm excited to be here, excited to do this today.
Yes, absolutely. This year we've been talking about profitability, and I know that's a big part of what you do and what you help clients with, increasing their profitability. And you serve as a fractional CFO. So I'm super excited to get your take on all of this. Of
Sure.
course, there's a lot of confusion out there about what a CFO is, and a lot of people who maybe claim to be CFOs that might not be. Can you tell us what exactly is a CFO? What do they do? And how do I know when I might need one?
Sure. Absolutely. So, most folks that are in the accounting world and finance world, right, really looking backwards and looking in the rearview mirror, right? Preparing reports, right, on things that have already been done financially. So, like profit and loss, balance sheet, getting your taxes done. I'm sure your listeners have someone in their world that's helping them with those things. There's nothing wrong with that. The CFO's role is just far different from that. Instead of looking at the rear view mirror, we're completely focused on the future and looking forward. Where are we going? And so we're going to be into, it's very strategic, a lot of annual planning, a lot of forecasting, there is a lot of data analysis and looking at trends and seeing where have we been, but we're doing it in a way so that we can move forward and look forward into the future and see what's going to happen to the best of our ability, the best that we can. And when do you need a CFO? That was kind of your second part question there. I think as you grow a business and you near that $1 million mark, that tends to be where you've got enough things going on financially. As a CFO, we're going to be very strategic and we're going to help you solve financial problems that you're dealing with in the here and now, and also help you foresee the problems that you might have in the near future. So as you near that $1 million mark, that's a great time to start looking for a part-time CFO to get them into your life, get them into your world, and start working with an expert just on a part-time basis, not necessarily that full-time hire that's sitting in-house, but just work with a fractional one once you hit that $1 million mark or thereabout.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. You know, um, as a business owner myself, I've been through the evolutions.
Sure.
And, many law firm owners listening to this, maybe you've been through these evolutions. When I first started my business, everything was I had one little Excel spreadsheet to help me know if I was keeping enough money on hand, right? Kind of planning out the quarter and things like that.
Yep.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about the role of forecasting and why forecasting is so important.
For sure. Yes. So part of what you were doing there to see if you had enough cash on hand, I think, is an ongoing concern for all of us as business owners, right? That's really what makes the determination, like, are we going to be in business in 3 months or not?
Yeah.
And so when we're doing work on the forecasting side, on the CFO side, if you're gonna run into any problems in the future, the sooner that we know it, the sooner we can pivot and make changes, right? And the longer timeline you have, right? If, like, for example, if I had a client call me today and they're like, "Hey, I have 2 weeks, I have a payroll coming up, and I don't have the money for it." Short timeline, hard to work with, hard to make that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I had a client call me and they're like, "Hey, we have a great forecast, and in 2 months, I'm not going to be able to make payroll based on what things I've got going on." That's a whole different ballgame, right? And we can probably do some things and make adjustments and maybe make that happen, right? And
Yeah.
so forecasting just becomes critical, and it's not just with making payroll. That's an extreme situation, right? That's as extreme as it gets, right, of running out of money. But it's in everything in the business, right? It's um like trigger points on, hey, it's time to make that next hire, right? And we forecasted forward, like, here's where your marketing activities are leading to more cases. Like if you're a law firm, I know you and I work with a lot of law firms, but even in other businesses too, if we're forecasting your growth and we know what capacity your team currently has, we can forecast forward and see, when do you need that next person that's really trained up, that can work with those clients or those customers, so that your customers and clients continue to have a great experience, and you're not behind on deadlines or just barely meeting deadlines, right? And so that forecast forward is critical for all parts of the business to make
Yeah.
sure that you're on track and headed in a good direction.
Thank you so much for that. I started doing a more rigorous forecast in my business later on, and it was so powerful. I think so many of us as business owners, we're just kind of flying blind through the storm. I have the advantage of being in a business where a lot of the income is recurring income, which is nice, but a lot of law firms are transactional or their contingency fee. And so, forecasting just becomes even more important in that kind of a business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, but you can definitely see, the money that's coming in, right? So to your point, when you have something that's recurring, obviously you can forecast that in the future easier.
Yeah.
When it's transactional, it's probably a little bit less easy to forecast, but you can still do it based on, the bills that you have coming due. Or if you're on the personal injury side of the table, for example, you might settle a case today, and there's certain laws around, insurance has to pay within 45 or 60 days. That gives you a good timeline window that you can forecast out over with some good certainty. And
Yeah.
so you can definitely still get it done, and it is vitally important. Can't underestimate it.
Yeah, for a long time running my business, it was just, you have this credit card and you're like, I think I need that thing, so I'm going to go ahead and just charge it on the card and I'll pay it off later. Well, that can be kind of a recipe for disaster.
Yes, yes, it can be. And that's part of our job as a CFO too. We're heading into here. I don't know when this is going to come out, but we're heading into near the close of 2026, right? Like, we're sitting here in the middle of August, and I say that, and people are like, "That's crazy." But realistically, to get things done, if we cut things off at December like 15th before we get into holidays, you got 4 months, right?
Oh,
And the year
take
is
it down,
gone,
Brian.
right? So so now is the time to start, looking at plans for next year, and in that annual planning process, that's a lot of the work that we do on the CFO side. Part of that is, we deal with business owners all the time that kind of had that mindset of, I need this, I'm going to put it on the card and I'll pay it off later. And then they accumulate this debt and
Yeah.
then don't have a plan to pay it back. And
Yeah.
so part of the annual planning process is not just like, well, this is what we're going to do in sales next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not it. Like, you got to go all the way down through the process and figure out, like, how much money are we going to add to the bank?
Mhm.
What's our plan for paying back debt? Who do we need to
Yes.
hire? What's that going to cost on the investment side of things? What does our marketing plan look like, and what we're going to spend there? And so that's a big part of our role that we have coming up here in September, October, November, as we close out 26 and start looking ahead to 27.
Yeah. What I love about forecasting is that it doesn't require budgeting, and it gives you the ability to say yes or no to certain things. Before I forecasted anything, I was just kind of like, we had targets for the quarter, what we wanted to hit, and we didn't know if we were going to hit them. We're just kind of like, well, we hope we're doing okay, and we'll see how we do when we get there. But if I forecast things, I may not know exactly to the penny how the quarter is going to end, but I can have a reasonable degree of certainty around how the quarter is going to end, how much profit I'm going to have. And so I just really want to push that for our audience. Like, if you have not done that before, even if you're not ready for like CFO level forecasting, build your own forecast. Like, get into Excel and just start something simple.
And the more you do it, the better and more accurate it's going to get to.
Yeah. And
I'm
you can
sure
even use Claude to help you these days.
that is correct for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Ryan, one of the things that is so pernicious about debt is, and I said this the other day at a mastermind, and people were like, "What?" And so I think it's kind of mind blowing, and I never really understood it till I really examined it myself. But debt is paid back with after tax dollars, and I had to really think about that for a minute. But then I really understood it. Like if I have $10,000 of debt, I don't need to make $10,000 to pay it off. I need to make probably like $14,000 to pay it off because I've got to make money and then I've got to pay tax on the money I make and then I've got to pay down the debt. Is that a conversation that you have to help people understand sometimes?
I actually talked about that in a master class this morning. So when you, and the reason why that is when you bring in the debt, right? Like let's say you go out and get a line of credit and you use it, let's say $50,000. You don't pay taxes on that money up front.
Mm-hmm.
It comes into your bank account. There's no taxes on it. It's
Yep.
50 grand. It's dollar for dollar. You get to use the whole thing, right? But then to your point, to pay it back, you actually have a percentage of a percentage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're paying it back on the business side, because first you have sales or revenue, and then you take out expenses, which is going to be a percentage. So
Yep.
if you sell $1 and let's just say you're keeping 25 cents out of that dollar,
Yep.
right? So that's a percentage. And then to your point, on that 25 cents, we pay taxes. So then it's a percentage of a percentage. And that brings you down to, well, I'm left with 15 cents. And out of that $1, right? $1 down to 25 cents down to 15.
Yeah.
But yes, you're not using 25 cents to pay back debt. You're using 15 cents out of that dollar to pay back debt. You're also not using the dollar to pay back debt. Because you have to take out expenses first. So yeah, I mean, to your point, it takes some serious planning. And we're talking about a percentage of a percentage to really allocate and pay back that debt. And so, you gave the example of like to pay back 10, you probably got to make 14. I would say it's even higher
Even
than
more.
that, right?
Yeah, the expenses. You're so right. I think so often for many law firm owners like me, we maybe started out as a solo, all by ourselves. And so at that time, you're kind of training yourself in this kind of like break even mentality where it's like, every dollar you make is money then you get to spend. But then as you grow and you have employees, it's not quite that simple. And so we really have to evolve our thinking, and get away from this break even. Like I make 10,000, I get to spend 10,000. No, there's a lot more that happens in between.
Yep, that's right, for sure.
Interesting. Ryan, what are some of your like profitability metrics or goals? Like what is a healthy level of profit for a law firm?
Sure. So I always talk about this in terms of and assuming that you as the owner or you as the partner, that you're on salary.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important distinction because the percentage that I'm going to give you if you weren't on salary would be a lot less money, right? And I'm assuming that you're on salary and you're not just on salary because you have to be and you're not paying yourself like 50 grand.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you're paying yourself decently, right? At the same time, I'm not saying that you're paying yourself $500,000 through salary, right? I'm saying we're paying ourselves adequately, something to live, just an above moderate lifestyle, right? That the number that comes into my head is like 150,000, 160,000, something like that, where you're legitimately paying yourself. You can pay a lot of your bills, and then you take additional distributions as bonuses to really up your lifestyle from there, right?
Yeah.
So assuming that we've got that in there, that $150,000 in there, as you grow your firm, this percentage can change. And if you're going through a growth phase, it's going to be less because it definitely takes money to grow. But if we're optimizing your firm for profits, and you're on salary, that number better be 25 to 30% in profits,
Yeah.
right? And so, that's around a third, right? Of that every dollar that comes in should be in profits, right? And I really think that's a minimum threshold, is that 25 to 30%, because to me, that's where it becomes worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ask my clients all the time, everybody wants to grow, right? And it's exciting to grow, right? More clients, more impact, more employees, right? But it's also more work. And
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
if you're going to go add $1 million,
Oh, yeah.
right, in more work, do you want to keep 80 grand when you're done?
Mm-mm.
No.
Mm-mm.
For me, my minimum number is 250,
Yeah.
right? And so that's 25%. And I'm much better with 300.
Right. Right.
Right? Like 250 is my minimum, like get out of bed number. Like, yeah, that probably makes sense. I'll go do it. 300 sounds a lot better, right? And obviously those small percentage changes, until you start adding some zeros behind it, you start thinking about it in terms of, if I go add $1 million in work, you don't necessarily see that picture, right?
Mhm.
So to me, I think we got to optimize first. Let's make sure we're at that 25 to 30% mark or better.
Yeah.
And then from there, then it makes sense to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you made that distinction. Profit is what your business made after you paid yourself a market-based wage for your role. And I think profit gets a bad rap sometimes in the legal world because you're in a profession, you want to help people, you shouldn't necessarily be in it for the money, so to speak, right? What do you say to those that might be uncomfortable with focusing so explicitly on profit?
Yeah, I think you're in business. You took a risk,
Mhm.
right? A big risk, right? There's it probably doesn't happen in the legal world as often as everywhere else, but we still have an huge failure rate in businesses in America today, right?
Yeah.
Like, still, the number that Forbes always puts out is 50% in 5 years, right?
Mhm.
And there's a solid like 20 or 30% that happens in the first two. So
Yeah.
you took a big risk, right? And then the thing is that the owners that fail, a lot of times it wrecks them personally, because they're dumping a ton of personal money into the business to try to save it.
Yep.
And so you're in business to make money. You took a big risk, and I think, Darren, you and I can agree that most of the time business owners get into business to control how much money they can make
Mhm.
and to control their own time.
Yeah. Yeah. Time's a big one. And
And
go
and
ahead.
then I run into a lot of clients that don't do either,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so if we're not doing that with our business, what are we doing?
Yeah, 100%. I've said this quite a few times this year because it's been on my mind. Um, Going back to the revenue and profit thing, to have more revenue and make less profit, you're just working harder for the same amount of money or less. That no one wants to do that. And on what you're talking about now, what I see from like the personal financial planning perspective is so many law firm owners, from this is a very non-scientific survey, but they're in their 50s, and they have very little saved for retirement. They have very little accumulated in terms of personal wealth. And I think there's a reason for that. You've sacrificed a lot to grow the business. In getting the business started and getting it up and running, there is a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of foregoing. You're not making the $200,000-$300,000 a year that you could be making in big law, or and sometimes you're not making as much as you could be making as a greeter at Lowe's, but so there's a lot of sacrifice that happens. And so, to reap those rewards is perfectly legitimate because you've spent so much time building this enterprise. You deserve to reap those rewards, which are really the wealth that you have foregone to get to this point.
Yep. And I want to, while we're here, I want to plug a couple things, and
Yeah.
one of them is you as a planner. But I talked about earlier, client that calls up and says, "Hey, I've got 2 weeks," versus client says 2 months. Retirement is the same way, and I know you would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
There, I always tell clients that I'm working with, you got to be putting money away for your own retirement while you're
Yes.
working this business, for a couple of reasons. Like you've mentioned, as they're running the business, a lot of their wealth and opportunity gets wrapped up in their firm,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the only vehicle that you're dependent on, to
Yeah.
retire, I spend a lot of time in rooms with firms that are in mergers and acquisitions and in exit planning, and they'll tell you the market rate for businesses that sell is somewhere between 25 and 30%.
Yeah.
So that business owners successfully exit and sell.
Yeah.
So 10 get listed, 2 to 3 of them are actually going to sell.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important for your listeners to take
Huge.
in. And
Huge.
by the way, like like while I do have retirement savings, I'm guilty as charged too, by the way, right? That I still have a good amount of wealth wrapped up in my business, right? So, but I'm still working on other vehicles too,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
definitely super risky for that to be your only thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I think get with somebody like you, Darren, and they need to start planning earlier and leverage the income that you are making out of your business and put away some as well.
Yeah. The objection I run into is, well, my business is my retirement plan, or I never plan on retiring. So why would I need to save money? Well, you will exit your business one way or another. It would be much better if it was by your own choosing. And there's no guarantee. While law is a profession that is not physically demanding, it's more mental and knowledge work, and you could continue doing it for a long time, well into your 70s, maybe even your 80s. Um, there's no guarantee that you'll still be able to function at the level you're at. Also, your thoughts about all of that will change significantly. I talk to law firm owners in their 40s and they're like, I never want to retire. Talk to them in their 60s, they're like, get me the hell out of here. So, and you're spot on. I think, thank you for bringing up that point about businesses selling. Um, it's very in vogue to talk about growing your law firm into a sellable asset, and while that could be achievable for you, the rates of success are very low. There's a lot of risk there, and more important, well, not more importantly, but also importantly, the multiple that you get for selling your business is not going to replace the cash flow that you're used to getting, unless you're going to get like a 25x multiple.
Yep.
It's not going to happen. So it's a nice bonus at the end of the rainbow, but it's not going to be sufficient for you to retire on.
Yep. For sure. For sure. And I think in general, it seems like we're living longer, just in general, and it also seems like mental challenges of having all of your facilities that long,
Yeah.
just as is not always, just not happening as long, right? And
Oh yeah.
um, so there's risk there that we probably don't think about on a day to day basis.
Oh, and let's talk about AI too, because the
Sure.
landscape is changing so rapidly, and it always will be changing. I mean, law firms today are not doing what law firms did 20 years ago, right? So a lot of times people think I've built this successful business, now I can just coast. Wrong. You have to be continually evolving, right? Who wants to continue working that hard? I sure as hell don't want to continue working that hard, for as long as I can, right? I definitely want to get to a point where I can get out of this and go, relax a bit more. So I think that's a big misconception people have.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan, I know you mentioned you have some favorite KPIs that you love to track. I'd be curious, what are some of those, maybe, two or three or four of your favorites that are like the most critical, the most important for law firm owners to really keep track of for their financial success?
Sure. Yeah. One of them we talked about already. I love to look at profit percentage, not just profit dollars.
Mm,
Because you can have a year where you grow your business and your profit dollars increase year over year, and you actually lose percentage points,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, as an example, 30% of $1 million is less than 25% of $5 million, right? Or something like that. I haven't actually done the math on that, but that probably works out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm looking at the profit percentage, we're really, in my opinion, we're looking at how efficient were the operations of the business. And
Mhm.
so if you're losing percentage points, you're losing efficiency.
Yeah.
And then my biggest next question is, where is that happening at?
Yeah.
The next two metrics are also percentages, and this is usually where that inefficiency happens at. Number one is our labor costs and our payroll. What
Yes.
is that as a percentage of revenue? Again, not just dollars, because it's not necessarily a bad thing that if that goes up,
Yeah.
right? If the business grows and our payroll goes up, we've hired more people, right? But the bigger thing is, what's our percentage?
Yeah.
And same thing with marketing, right? Again, it's not necessarily a bad thing if we're spending more in marketing. It's what's our percentage, because that's going to get you down to what's been our return
Right.
to an extent, right? And especially if you can allocate those marketing dollars and directly connect the cases that it generated, that's even better.
Yeah.
But keeping a good handle on those percentages, super, super important and for your success, especially as you grow.
Yeah.
Um, and then a couple others that I like to look at always that are non-financial data. So you're not going to see these on your statements, right? Always love to track how many cases are we opening on a monthly basis? How
Mhm.
many are we closing on a monthly basis?
Mhm.
And then that gets us down to what's our net either growth or decline.
Yeah.
And I like to track that by case type.
Okay.
So if you're a firm that you do criminal defense and personal injury, I'd want to track that separately. I want to know open and closes on both sides, right? Again, just kind of it gives us a run rate, right? And kind of gives us some capacity metrics. If
Yeah.
I'm a criminal defense lawyer and I'm open I'm opening 8 new DUI cases a month and I'm closing 6, I know we're gaining 2 every month,
Yeah.
right?
Love that.
And especially track this on a trend line, right? Track this every month, see what's been happening, right? And if you're continually gaining 2 every month, this is where we get back to forecasting. And once I have the data, now I know, okay, well, when are we going to, how many months have to go by before we're to a place where we can add that next attorney to start
Mhm.
managing that surplus of +2, +3, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are some great non-financial data marks that I like
Okay.
to track.
Yeah, opening and closing, that's smart. That's a really good way to look at that. If there's a bottleneck, if you're turning over the cases efficiently. On the hiring aspect, this is like one of the biggest things that law firm owners struggle with hiring. Labor in general, right? Labor and hiring is like one of the biggest headaches, right? When do you know that? I mean, what's your perspective? Do I wait till I have the cash flow to hire, or do I hire ahead of the growth? When do I know I'm ready to hire in your perspective?
I think it's kind of in the middle. I like to tell lawyers to start looking, like if I'm a lawyer, I'm a solo. Let's say I have 20 hours a week of legal work that I want to hand off or
Mhm.
that I can hand off. I would start now to look to hire, because by the time you get through your hiring process and actually get someone in the door, get them trained up, and even if they're an experienced lawyer, you still are going to have a transition period, right? Where they've got to get used to your systems and things like that. So usually when you're making this hire, if you're working with us, we're going to set you up for, on that person, you're going to have somewhere between a 3 and 5x return on their payroll dollars. So if we have 20 hours and we have half of what their capacity is when you start to get ready to hire, we know that by the time you bring them in the door, you're going to be better than break even. And so then as you continue to add more work and you unload the work that you have on your plate, by the time you get them in the door, you might have 30 hours to give up, right?
Mhm.
Assuming that you're continuing to market and continuing to grow.
Yeah.
And so that 30 hours is going to be profitable on you giving them those 30 hours per week. And then also it frees you up to go back to do more case development and be in the closing room and close deals, right? And so that's the place that I like to tell solos to start looking.
Makes sense. Great advice, Ryan. Well, we're coming to the end of our time here. It's so short. I have a couple of questions for you just as we wrap up. First is what's a new way that you are using AI in your daily operations? Do you have any new fun ways that you're employing AI recently?
Yes. I always ask AI for lists of KPIs, especially when I'm dealing with a specific situation, right?
Okay.
So one of the law firms that I'm working with, they have a non-attorney sales team with two people on it.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of brainstorming with it back and forth. Here's the situation. Here's what we've got going on. What are some good metrics that we could bonus these non-attorney salespeople on?
Yeah.
Um, and we have to be careful. There's some legal requirements there and things like that that I've got to work with the lawyer on. But
Right.
that's been a great way to bounce ideas off of. Give me idea. Obviously I have some easy upfront metrics, right? Of, well, they should convert at X% and things like that. But it gives me an idea of some other out of the box metrics that I might not be thinking of right offhand. So that's been
Mm.
great for me.
Okay, okay, very cool. And then, we love to talk about books on this show, and we've been reading a bunch of books on profitability this year, which has been really exciting. What is one of your either favorite books of all time or something that you're reading right now that's been very insightful for you?
Yep. So right now I'm reading Walking to Destiny. So Walking to
Oh,
Destiny,
yeah.
written by Chris Snyder.
Yep.
He's one of the founders of the Exit Planning Institute,
Yes.
EPI. Your listeners might be familiar with them. They're a nationwide organization. Their whole entire focus is helping business owners exit. And
Mhm.
so that's something that I'm in those rooms and I've been reading that recently. And Walking to Destiny is all about adding value to your business and exiting at the best possible value that you can. And so, for all of your listeners, it's probably a book that has some value to them as well,
Yeah.
right? How do you exit your business in a way that brings you the most value? So, it's been a good book.
Very cool. Yes, I've been through their training, which is really, really excellent. And many of our clients are in that position. That's when financial planning and tax planning and business really all come together and need to be coordinated very carefully.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. It's a big process to sell.
Yep.
And just so your listeners know too, right? I don't think there's an ideal time to start planning for selling, but
Yeah.
everyone that I've been around, they're like, it takes at least 5 years to
Yeah.
really plan and do it right. And so, if you're listening and that's on your horizon, definitely have that in mind, right? And start sooner rather than later.
100%. So right. So right. Well, Ryan, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show today. Anything else you want to share with our audience before we go?
Um, last thing that I would share real quick, this is my last piece of advice on a lot of shows. Whether it's me or some other financial professionals, I just recommend, especially if you're a law firm owner, business owner, it doesn't matter. Most of the time, the finances are not your expertise. Get some folks in your corner that is their expertise. Get them as early as you can. Ask for recommendations from your network. That could be on the accounting side, it could be on the tax side, it could be on the CFO side, it could be on the financial planning and retirement side. It doesn't matter. Get those financial folks that you really trust and start building those relationships as early as you can. If you want to connect with me, you can Google me. LinkedIn usually comes up pretty early. Ryan Kimler, Kimler, and then also company website netprofitcfo.com, and you can connect with us there. I'd be happy to connect with any of your audience. I've got my calendar link right on my website, so they're more than welcome to book a time with me. I'd be happy to have a conversation.
Very cool. And we will make sure that all of that gets put into the show notes. So if you're listening, be sure to check out the show notes because we actually have a lot of really cool resources that we put in the show notes. I was just reminded of that the other day. So be sure to go ahead on down there and check all of that out and follow Ryan on LinkedIn and elsewhere. Well, Ryan, it's been great having you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
All right, a huge thank you to Ryan Kimler for joining us today. You can find all the links to connect with him and learn more about him in today's show notes. And by the way, we've got a ton of resources in the show notes, so go check those out. A lot of great stuff waiting for you there. My biggest takeaway for you today is simply that you need to forecast if you're not already doing that. Financial forecasting is such a game changer. It was for me in my business, and it can be for you also, which is why I've been harping on this all year long. If you're serious about being profitable in an intentional way, this is the step that makes it real. And it affects everything, not just your business and your business growth. It affects your taxes and your tax planning, and also your financial health and your wealth building. And that's what it's all about. And here at the Lawyer Millionaire, this is the work that we do every single day, bringing your business, tax, and personal wealth strategy all together into one cohesive plan guided by one integrated team of professionals. If that's the team that sounds right for you, connect with me. You can find the link to schedule a call in the show notes. And by the way, come join us inside the Lawyer Millionaire community at community.lawyermillionaire.com. It's free to join. We've got a ton of great events and resources waiting for you in there. Well, that's it for today, friend. And remember this: if your law firm isn't giving you wealth, well, how in the hell is it going to give you freedom? Can I get an amen up in here? Now, go make the cash flow and make the profits grow. And I'll see you next time.